Okay, today we are talking about adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing polynomials. Well, actually not dividing, just multiplying. So when you are adding polynomials, sometimes they will be written vertically, one on top of the other. Sometimes they will be written horizontally, where they're side by side. All you're doing is combining like terms. Okay? So there's no like carrying or anything like that. You're just combining your like terms. So if we go through here, 3x cubed and x cubed is what? 4x cubed. What do you do when you have two negatives?
Add and pick the higher number.
You add and it stays negative. So negative 5 and negative 2 make negative 7. And I always think of these as like last names. You're adding, but you keep the end part the same. This isn't x to the 6th. The only time those change is when you're multiplying. Okay? But right now we're just combining like terms. So whichever terms are like, you're adding them together and they stay that same like term. This 4x doesn't match with anything, so you just bring it down. And then negative 6 and positive 3 makes? Negative 3, because we subtract, take the sign of the bigger number. So, when it is written horizontally...
So you do nothing else besides that?
Yeah, that's it. When you're adding horizontally, you can stack it vertically if you like that better. Or, I just always look for what is my highest exponent. Because when you're writing your answers, you always want to write them in descending order.
Y the third.
Okay, so what I mean by descending order is you start with your highest exponent and then you keep going lower and lower and lower. Because that is descending. Descending is getting smaller. But that's dealing with your exponents. So if you look through here, your first one is 2y to the third. Are there any other y to the third terms?
No way, Jose.
So that means I have 2y to the third that I write down. When you have so many terms, what I end up doing is once I've taken care of one of the terms, I cross it out. Exactly. And so I know that's done. I don't have to think about it anymore. So now I go to y to the second. I have a positive 7.
And a positive 3.
Nope. And a negative 4.
Sorry.
Okay. Don't forget to circle the sign with each of your terms. Okay? So a positive 7 and a negative 4 makes what?
Positive 3 and y to the second.
Good. Positive 3y to the second. Because we subtract and take the sign of the larger number. The larger number was positive, so therefore my answer is going to be positive. Okay? Those are done. So I cross those out. Next will be our plain y's. So I have a negative 6y and a positive 3y. And what does that make? Good. Negative 3y is correct. So now that's done. And then lastly, we have a negative 9, which doesn't match with anything, so we just have negative 9. And that is my answer.
What if
Yes?
you came out and all those numbers could be a PCF?
You could do that. But right now, when you're just adding and subtracting, you don't have to worry about that. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So, what do you think the big thing about subtracting is?
Make sure you get the right numbers in the right places.
No.
The sign.
The sign. Because what are you going to have to do with that subtraction? It's not just saying subtracting 6x to the third. It's saying you're subtracting this whole parenthesis. So what do we do with that subtraction sign?
You change every other sign.
Yeah, you have to change all the signs. You're distributing that negative to everything. So I normally will do that first. So the 6 will be a negative. The 3 will be a negative. This one will be a positive. And the last one will be a negative.
I like this.
So this is now set up vertically, so we have our like numbers that are in the same spot. So 7 minus 6 will give me
X to the third.
1x to the third, or just x to the third. Very good. On this next one, you have a negative 6 and a negative 3, which is what? Negative 9, because we add and keep the sign the same. So negative 9x squared. A negative 3 and a positive 7, what does that make?
Positive 4x.
Good, positive 4x. And then a positive 7 and a negative 5 makes
Positive 2.
positive 2. And that is our answer. Okay, so why don't you try the next one on your own?
If you already have to do something.
Yeah, too many people can get it quickly. Perfect. No, you just leave it like this for right now. Okay, so the first thing you should have done was what? I'm going to do this for a popsicle stick. What is the first thing that I should have done on this problem? Jenica. Perfect, except for you skipped one step, and that's just because I know you already did it. But what would we do before that? Good, change the signs. We're distributing that negative through. So the 12x will be negative, then the 9x will end up being a positive, and the 3 will be a positive. Once I changed all those, I'm going to change this to a plus because I distributed the negative, so I don't have to worry about it anymore. So now Jenica told us that we are going to combine our like terms. So 8x squared and negative 12x squared becomes what?
Negative 4x.
Good, negative 4x squared, because when we have opposite signs, subtract, take the sign of the larger number. Those are done. Next, we have negative 5x and a positive 9. What do I do?
Negative or positive 4x. Combine that terms and keep the sign of the larger and
Okay, so we subtract, take the sign of the larger number. So that's going to be a positive 4x. And then lastly, I have a 11 and 3. Both of them are positive, so we add, and it will be positive 14. Any questions on adding or subtracting?
Nobody.
Okay, let's move on. Now we're going to talk about multiplying.
FOIL.
So multiplying, you have two options. You have FOIL. Does anybody know what FOIL stands for? Good. So FOIL, it goes, it's first, outside, inside, last. Okay, now FOIL is great when you have 2 by 2. But when you have 2 by 3 and 3 by 3, the same process doesn't always work. You need to make sure that you are always taking this first term and multiplying to everything in the second parenthesis. And then you take the second term and multiply to everything in the parenthesis in order to get the correct answers. Another method that I use is I just call it the box method. How many of you do that? Or know what I'm talking about? Some of you? So notice right here that this is 2 by 2. Yes? So I make a box that's 2 by 2. What I like about doing the box is that I don't forget to multiply anything and everything is organized. You do not have to use the box method, but I'm going to use the box method on a lot of the things that I do because I feel like it organizes things well. But again, you can do it whichever way you want to. Okay. So once you make your 2 by 2 box, because I have 2 terms by 2 terms, I write one of the parentheses down and one of the parentheses across the top. It doesn't matter where you put either one, okay? But pay attention to signs. So now you multiply. Right here, this box, I'm multiplying x times x. And what is x times x? X squared. I go to the next box. X times negative 3 is negative 3x. Here, negative 5 times x is, and then negative 5 times negative 3 is positive 15, because a negative times a negative is a positive. Okay, your diagonals normally match and are like terms. Okay, and again, remember, you're always going to write your answers in descending order. So we start with x to the second. Negative 5 and negative 3 we will add, and that makes what?
Negative 8x.
Good, negative 8x, and then plus 15. And that is my answer. Are there questions on that problem? Okay, so on the next one, if you notice, the first parenthesis has how many terms? 2, and the last one has 3. So on this box, I'm going to make it a 2 by 3. So I make mine long. So this is a 2 by 3 box. See how it's 2 here and 3 across the top. So on this one, we have to write it a certain way because the 3 box has to go with the 3 terms, right? Right. So we have our x and our negative 3, and x squared, 2x, and negative 5. You're confused? Where? This is 3 terms right here. X squared, 2x, and negative 5. And this is 2 terms. If you want to make it long and do 3 down and 2 on the top, that's fine too. Is that what you mean?
No, I was just confused because I missed that.
Just the 2 by 2. Right, so now you have to pay attention to how many terms. Okay?
But it will always work for me.
Always. As long as you have the right amount. Okay, so are you guys ready to multiply?
Yes.
So this first box, if you look, you have x and x squared, which will make x to the third. Go to the next one. X times 2x is
2x squared.
x times negative 5,
Negative 5x.
negative 5x. Then we go down. Negative 3 times x squared is
Negative 3x squared.
negative 3 times 2x is
Negative 6x squared.
negative 6x. And negative 3 times negative 5 is a positive 15. Are you still confused or do you see? You said negative 6x squared. It's negative 6x.
Yeah, I know, because I thought you were talking about negative 3x squared still.
Okay. So then we do, if you look still in your diagonals, you have like terms.
I got it.
So I usually circle those so it's easy to see them. And again, we start doing descending order. So my highest exponent is x to the third. A negative 3 and a positive 2 makes negative x squared, good, or negative 1. Negative 6 and negative 5 will make, good, negative 11x. And then I have positive 15. And this is your answer. Questions?
Comments, concerns.
Do you guys see how this works?
Sure.
All right. Now, this next one is a little tricky. Does anyone know how you do this next one? Good. You start by you can't multiply all 3 of them at the same time. You cannot. You have to start by multiplying 2 of them together and get the answer. And then once you have the answer, then you multiply it with the next one. So on this first one, we can multiply it together. So we have our x and negative 3 and x and positive 7. So when we multiply here, I get x times x, which is
X squared.
x squared. X times 7 is 7x. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x. And negative 3 times 7 is good. Then we can combine our like terms that are in our diagonals. And we get x squared and negative 3 and positive 7 makes positive 4x minus 21. So just don't forget that you are not done. So now I'm taking this right here and this. So now I'm multiplying this times x plus 1. So what size box am I going to need now?
3 by 2.
Good, 3 by 2. Okay, so along the top we do our three terms, which is x squared, 4x, and negative 21. And along the side I have an x and a positive 1. Am I going too fast? Or are we good? Okay, so this first box is x times x squared, which is x cubed. X times 4x is 4x squared. X times negative 21, negative 21x. Then we have 1 times x squared, which is x squared. 1 times 4x is 4x. And 1 times negative 21 is... Okay, we have our like terms and our diagonals. We start with x to the third power. 4 and 1 makes, so we have a plus 5x squared. 4x and negative 21 makes negative 17x. And then we have our minus 21. And that is our answer. Any questions? So on the next problem, what size box are we going to need?
3 by 3.
Exactly, a 3 by 3. So it's a little bigger, okay? So if you notice, if you like the FOIL method, it just starts to get a little complicated when you get to more terms, because you are, multiplying this term to all 3 of these, then this term to all 3 of these, then this term to all 3 of these. The nice thing with the box is it organizes everything. So all your like terms are together. You're not having to search for your like terms. So I like the organization of this, okay? So if you do it this way, you should be fine as long as you remember how to add and subtract and multiply, okay? So I'm going to do on the side the negative dx squared, the negative d squared, 4d, 3, and then along the top is 3d squared, negative 7d, and 6. Are we ready to start multiplying, or do you guys want me to wait a minute? We're good? Are you guys already multiplying? Okay, so negative d squared times 3d squared is... Good, negative 3d to the 4th. Then we have negative d squared times negative 7d, which is 7d to the 3rd, because a negative times a negative is a positive. And then we have negative 6d squared. Right? Yes? Okay, next line, or next row. 4d times 3d squared is...
12d to the 3rd.
Good, 12d to the 3rd. 4d times negative 7d is... Good, negative 28d squared. 4d times 6 is...
24d.
Good. 3 times 3d squared is 9d squared. 3 times negative 7d is negative 21d. And then 3 times 6 is 18. So basically, with multiplying, you multiply to get your box, and then you combine like terms. So then you're adding or subtracting. So again, look at your diagonals. These are both d to the 3rds. These are d squareds. These are plain d's, and then you have your number. That was a negative. Make sure we see that. Okay, so which do we start with?
The 3rds. Well, the 4th first.
Good. So this has nothing that it matches with. So we have negative 3d to the 4th. Okay, and if you want to, you can like cover them up with a piece of paper if you wanted to make it easier to see. So then our next is a 12 and a 7, which makes what?
19.
A positive 19d to the 3rd. And the next one, I have 3 terms. I have 2 negatives and a positive. it's always easiest if you combine your two that are the same. So add those together, and then you have your negative and positive and subtract. So what's negative 28 and negative 6 equal? So we have negative 34 and a positive 9. So what will negative 34 and a positive 9 equal? Good. So you have negative 25d to the second. Then I have and be careful that you can read your signs, okay? So I have a negative 21 and a positive 24, which makes
3D.
positive 3d. And then lastly, I have plus 18. And that is my answer. Oops, you can't see my plus 18, sorry. Any questions there? All right. Last example. What does it mean when you have a parenthesis squared?
Two of the same.
Good, it's two of the same. You can't distribute this 2 through here. Whenever you have a minus or a plus in the middle, when you have two terms, you have to use your FOIL method or the box method. So that means I really have 3x minus 2 twice. So in order to multiply this out, you can use FOIL or we can use our box method. If I'm using my box method, what will be the size of my box?
2 by 2.
Very good. And then you have the same along both sides. 3x and a negative 2 and 3x and a negative 2. When we multiply, 3x times 3x is?
9x squared.
3x times negative 2 is?
Negative 6x.
Negative 2 times 3x is?
Negative 6x.
And negative 2 times negative 2 is a?
Positive 4.
So we have these like terms. And we end up with 9x squared
Minus 12x.
minus 12x, because two negatives I add and it stays negative, and then plus 4. All right, any questions on this lesson?